So today we'll start with the next part of process and threads. Okay. So next, when you talk about the context of your operating system, what do you mean by process? So, or the other name for your process is also called as task. Okay. So what do you mean by a task? So normally, if you take a task is defined as a program in execution. So some program you are going to run. So that particular program which will be running in execution, that is called as a task. So other name for your task is also called as program process. Okay. So now to have this particular task, what it has, what your operating system should maintain. So the operating system should maintain the related information. So the related information of a particular program has to be maintained by the operating system. So other name for the task is also called as job. Okay. So a program or part of its execution, so it is also called as a process. Okay. So if you take the program, a program can have a number of process. Okay. So a program, if you take is the n number of process may be running. So that part of that particular program is also, which is in execution, that is also called as process. Okay. So when you talk about the operating system context with respect to that one, so task, job, and process. Okay. So they are referred to the same entity in the operating system context. Okay. And depending upon the different context, so these particular terms will be used. So in some context they are going to make use of task, and some context they are going to refer it as a job, and some context they are going to refer it as a process. But all these terms refers to the same entity with respect to the operating system. Now when it comes to the process, so what a process requires to run. So basically a process requires the various system resources. What are the different various resources it requires to run? It requires the CPU for executing the process, and it requires the memory for storing the code corresponding to that particular process. Okay. And associated variable. So if we talk about the process, a process is nothing but what? It is nothing but a program, right? So we are telling that a process is a part of the program. So when you talk of the program, so if you take normal program, it will be having some variables, right? So to run the particular program. So what are that particular, where it will be stored? So that has to be stored in some part of the process. And if you are interacting with the outside world, so you are going to do some IO operations. So the IO, where you are, what type of IO operation you are going to perform, what type of data you are going to exchange. So those things has to be required by a process to execute. Okay. So next, when it comes to the structure of the process, okay, so what the process consists of. So when you talk about the process, if normally process leads to concurrent execution of a task. So it is nothing but what? So you're going to have the task or a program. So you're going to have a number of process running. Okay. So a number of process, it will be running parallelly. So that may be process one, process two, process three. So now all this process is going to make use of the CPU resources to run. So when they are running in parallel, so the efficient utilization of the CPU and other system resources should be there. So that means, so what are the resources it is going to have? Either it may be a CPU, it may be using, or it may be using the memory to associated variables, because we are going to declare the variables to store that particular variable. So I require the memory. So as we already know that, so what do you mean by variable? Variable is nothing but the named memory location. That means we are giving some name to the memory location. So now when you are giving the same name for the memory location, so there should be some space inside your process for that particular memory, right? So that should be there. So it has to make use of the efficient utilization of all these resources, system resources. So now when you are going to have the concurrent execution, so when you are going to have the parallel execution of this particular process, so how it is going to be achieved is the next question. Okay. So I am going to run process parallelly, but how? So, but how I can make use of that parallelism? So you are going to achieve that particular parallelism by sharing the CPU among the process. Because so when you are running a process has to be shared among the CPU resources has to be shared among all these process. So now I have to sharing the CPU resources when you are running your process. Now, next comes the question, what the process consists of. So if you talk about the process, a process may contains registers. Okay, so it contains the registers, it contains the stack, it contains the program counter, It contains the code corresponding to the code corresponding to process also. So if you take the structure of a process, it is going to have the stack, working registers, and the status registers and program counter. So now your program counter contains what? A program counter contains the code memory. Okay, so if you want to have the code program counter, so program counter will keep track of which instruction has to be executed next, right? So when you are going to have which instruction has to be executed next, so it has to have some memory for that particular instruction to be stored. So this particular process contains the memory also, and that particular memory is called as code memory. Okay, so that particular memory is called as code memory. So now when it comes to the normal CPU, so there are some of the properties which it is going to inherit from the CPU. So if you take this process, so it has to inherit some of the properties of the process. So now here, when you talk about the process, a process can be considered as a virtual processor. So that means what? So a processor will be executing a program, right? So here your process is called as what? It is also called as a virtual processor. That means it is not going to run in the foreground, so it will be running in the background. Okay. So now when it is going to behave as a virtual processor, so it will be awaiting its turn to have its properties switched into the physical processor. So what are the parts it has to execute? What operation it has to perform, so that it has to be switched into the that part of the operation has to be performed inside your physical processor. So now inside that particular process you are going to have some task, some work to be given, right? Some functionality has been given, so that task is to be completed. So now that is virtually running inside your operating system. Okay, so your process is not running virtually inside your where, so virtually it will be running inside the operating system. So now when it is running inside your operating system, so when the turn of that particular process to run comes, what I need to do? Okay, so when the turn of that particular processor comes, so that particular process which is there, that has to be switched to behave the same way as the physical processor. So that is what it is going to do. So now when the processor gets its turns, what it is going to do? So when the process gets its turns to execute, okay, inside in your physical processor, so it's register and program counter. Okay, so is registers and program counter. So it is going to be mapped. Okay, becomes mapped to the physical registers of the CPU, because where we are going to know that what are the registers it is going to use, but it is not mapped here. It is not mapped to the physical processor which will be there. So only when its turn comes to execute on the physical processor, it is going to map the registers to the physical register which is available in the CPU. Okay, so now almost, and here also the program counter is there. So if you take about the program counter is there in your hardware also, right? So here also it has to map to that particular hardware also. So the program counter which is there inside that particular process, so has to be mapped with the program counter which is there inside your processor also. Because what we require, what is the functionality of the program counter? The functionality of the program counter is to execute the instruction which is the next instruction which has to be executed. Okay, so that has to be keep track by your process with respect to the processor. Okay, so next when you talk about the memory organization of the process, as we have seen that if we take the memory, so you're going to have basically three different types of memory. What are the three different types of memory? One is your stack memory, data memory, code memory. So if you take the process, so process will be occupied by having the memory. So if you start talking about the memory organization of a process, so the memory occupied by the process is divided into three different regions. Okay, so that is what? That is your stack, data, and code. Now next comes what the stack memory contains. So basically, if we talk about the stack holds all the temporary data variable, okay, such as variable which is local to that particular process. Okay, so that will contains the variables which is local to that particular process. So now, usually what will happen whenever a stack has been initialized, so it should have some memory. So if we talk about the memory, it should have some address, right? So if you talk about the memory, it should have some address. So always the stack which you are going to have, it will be starting at the highest memory address from the memory area. Okay, allocated for that particular process. Okay, so if you're going to have created a process will be having some memory location, right? So that particular process is going to some memory location. So assume that I'm going to have have from this particular process from 2000 address to 1000 address. For example, I'm telling. So now your stack will be running from 2000 address. Okay, it is the top address, highest memory address which is there. So assume that it is going to start, it is going to have 2000 address. So your code memory is from your 1000 address. So it between your process will run between these two addresses. This is the memory address which your process is going supposed to run. So within these particular memory locations only, all your information has to be stored. Like your stack memory has to be initialized, and your data memory has to be initialized, and your code memory has to be initialized. So as I stored shown in this particular figure, so your stack memory resides where? So it will start from the higher memory address, from the memory area. Okay, and allocate it for the process. And always you have to keep in that. So you are always the stack memory grows downward. Okay, always the stack memory grows downward. So that means whenever you are going to insert the data into a stack, so that memory location of the stack will get decremented. Okay, so since the stack memory goes downwards, so after insertion, the memory is decremented. So after insertion, okay, so the memory is decremented. So and it will be going like that in subsequent fashion. Okay. So next comes what will be there in the data memory. So if you talk about the data memory, it was the global data for the process. So it is going to hold the global data is the port. So it's going to have the any variable which is declared as global. So if you take a variable, so if that particular variable is declared as global, okay. So variable declared as global. So that particular memory is going to be stored in your data memory. So it holds all global data for the process. Okay. So say whereas your stack memory it is going to hold the local. Okay. So the local variables will be stored in your stack memory, whereas your global variables will be stored in your data memory. So if it can be accessed by many functions, right? So when you want to access for many functions, if you are going to have, so you are going to declare that particular variable as is of type global. So it is going to be stored in your data memory. So when it comes to the code memory, so it contains the program code instruction. Okay. So what type of operation, what is the sequential operations it has to perform? What is how the execution of particular program has to go. So if when you're converting from higher level language to low level language, so it has to convert to the low level language to execute, right? So it is going to, if you talk about the machine level language, so whatever the program code you are going to have, so that has to be converted to the lower level language and it has to be executed. So in the code memory, what will happen? It contains that particular program code. Okay, it contains the program code for that particular process. So you're going to have the n number of process. So for a number of process, you are going to have some instructions, right? Okay, so those instructions which are being there, so that will be stored inside your code memory. Okay, so your code, as the name indicates, code memory, it is going to store the code. Okay, so now if you want to execute any process, okay, so if you want to execute the process, so I have to load that particular process into the main memory first before if I want to start particular process. So on loading a process into the memory, so what is the next step? What I have to do? So when you are going to have the memory in the primary memory, if you take main memory, so if you take the main memory, is nothing but your primary memory, right? So all of you know that one. So when you talk about the primary memory, so you are going to have some address. Okay, so that depends upon the size of the primary memory which you are going to have. Some maybe have 2 GB or some where it will be having 4 GB, right? So when you are going to have this particular space, that is size of your memory. So now a specific area is chosen between these memory. A specific area is chosen between this memory to run or to allocate to the process. Okay, so a specific area is located, okay, allocated for that particular process to run within that particular main memory. So your memory is the name of your primary memory. So if you talk about the primary memory, so that will be residing inside your RAM. Okay, so that will be residing your primary memory which you are going to have. So that will be residing inside your RAM. So if I execute that particular any program, first I have to allocate some space inside your RAM. So now after allocating it will start running. So now when it comes to the process, So these are some of the structure of the process which I have discussed. So now when you're talking about the process, so a process has to go through some of the states when it is executing, right? So it has to go through some of the states when it has been executed. So let us see what are the different states the process will run and how the transition is going to take place. So if you're going with the that particular process states, so that is normally called as your process life cycle. So that is called as your process life cycle. So if you go with the process life cycle, so it is going through some of the different states, and depending upon the operation what is performed on the particular process, the state transition is going to happen. So that we are going to represent using this state transition diagram. So initially when you are going with the process state and state transition, the first, when the beginning of the process, so whenever I want to execute some program, first I need to create the process, right? So the first step which is involved in your process state is creation of a process. So that means, so that particular, it is not a, from creation to termination, it's not a single step operation. So when you are going to have the process, so from creation of the process to the termination of that particular process, it is not a single step of operation. So now what the process has to go? If it is not a single step of operation, the process has to traverse through the series of states. Okay, so it has to go through the series of states during its transition from newly created state to the terminated state. So from the newly created state to the terminated state, so in between there will be a number of states. So different states you are going to have. So that I think you have been already read in your operating system concept. So just it will be a revision for you. So now the cycle through which a process changes its state from newly created to execution states. So that particular state, so it's called as process life cycle. So that means, so whatever that is, initially it will be newly created state. So till the termination state. So it will be having in between these two states. So there will be a number of states. So different states will be there depending upon the operation. So that particular state will be analyzed. So now, so process, normally the process life cycle if we take, so basically it will be represented using the state transition diagram. So your process life cycle is represented using the state transition diagram. So when you talk about the process state transition diagram, so this is a typical graphical pictorial view of your process state transition diagram. Okay, so initially when the process is created, okay, so initially what will happen, the process will be there. So the processor, what it is going to do, it is going to create the process. Okay, so the process will be created first. So the first particular process will be created. Once it is created, still it is not running. So if it has to run, next what I need to do, I need to send that particular process into the main memory. So that means I have to insert that one into the main memory. So that is after inserting into the main memory, so it will change the state from created to ready. Okay, it will change the state from created to inserting to main memory. Okay, so that is inception into the main memory is going to happen there. So when we are going to have the inception to the main memory, so here it is going changing the state from created to ready state. Okay, so from ready states, so next after getting ready, so depending upon the scheduler, so next the scheduler has to schedule the process depending upon the type of the scheduling. So now, so scheduler, what it will do, the scheduler is going to schedule that particular process depending upon the type of the scheduling algorithm, because it is not the only one process it has to run. So it may be having a number of, if I take a program will be having a number of processes. So depending upon the type of the operation which you're going to have, so that process will be running at that particular instance of time. So now when your scheduler is scheduled that particular process, so it is the scheduler is going to schedule the process for execution. So scheduler is scheduling the process for execution. Okay, scheduling process for execution. So now when it's scheduling the process for execution, what it is going to, your process is going to change the state from where to where, it is going to change the state from ready to running. Okay, So when the scheduler is invoked and that particular process is given the time quantum to run, so it is going to change the state from ready to running. Now, if when your process is running, some high priority task is going to come. Okay, some high priority process or high priority task is going to come, or some IO operation has to be performed. So what I need to do at that time? So then your context switch is going to happen. So whatever the process which is running right now, so that it has to be change the state from running to ready. So now when it is preempted, okay. So there are two operations which is going to have. One is the preemption. So preemption is going to have when you are going to have the high priority task. Okay. So when you are going to have the high priority task is coming, so your preemption is going to happen. So non-preemption means what? So whatever the task or process it is running, so the other it will not release the resources until it completes. But when the preemption is going to happen, so preemption is high priority. High priority process is coming, so that it has to release all the resources. Your process has to release all the resources what it is acquired for it to run. Okay. So whenever the process is interrupted or preempted, okay, so it is going from change the state from running to ready. Okay. So when it is preempted, it is going to change its state from running to ready. But some of the times what will happen, so your process requires some IO operations. Okay, so it has to require some data to be entered. So what it will happen, so if you are not getting the data, if I'm not getting the data through IO, so I not getting the data from input output device. So now if you are not getting that particular data from IO devices waiting for input output operations, so what I need to do, so I will change the state from running to blocked state. So that means blocked means what? Till you give the input, so it will not start running. Okay, so because it requires some data to be there to run. So if that particular data is not available, then it has to change the state. So it cannot run further. So to run it, depending upon the type of the data which you are going to give to the IO, that is input and output subsystems. So it is this particular process is going changing the state from running to blocked state. So it will be changing the state from running to blocked state. So now whenever the IO has come and if that particular IO operation is completed, so IO initiation has been taken, and if IO operation is completed, and IO operation is completed. So now once the IO operation is completed, so it will release the CPU. So once it is releasing, so what that particular process is going to change the state, it is going to change the state from blocked to ready. Okay, it is going to change the state from blocked to ready. Or whenever your process wants some shared data. Okay, so there are two different scenarios which will happen. One is waiting for IO, other is waiting for your shared resources. So once the IO operation has been completed, so your process is changing the state from block to ready state. So now whenever that particular process is waiting for your shared memory variable or shared resources, so if that particular shared resources is acquired or it is going to get that particular shared resources, so it is, and then also it is going to change the state from blocked to ready. Okay, so once it is ready, depending upon the scheduler, it will go from ready to running state. So once within that particular given amount of time, so if that particular process completes its execution, so process completion is going to happen after certain period of time. So once the execution of that particular process completed, it will change the state from running to completed state. So this is a typical structure of your process state diagram. Okay. So normally if you talk about your process state diagram, so you're going to have the 5 different states. What are they? One is your create state. Second is your ready state. Okay. So third is your running state. Fourth is blocked state. Fifth is completed state or in some of the other terminology, they are also called as terminated state. Okay, so it is going to be terminated state. So that particular process is going to be terminated and it will be removed from the memory. Okay, so once the process completes, so the process has to run inside your main memory. So once the process is completed, so the whatever the memory it is allocated for that particular process will be released. Okay, so once terminated, what will happen? The memory allocated for that particular process will be released. So memory allocated for that process will be released. Okay, so this will be released. Okay, so this is about your process state trace diagram. So anybody having any doubt with respect to this? With respect to the process, anybody having any doubt? Anybody having any doubt? Okay, so next, as we have seen, so your process, if you take, so since I already told that one, so if you talk with a process, so it's mainly deal with the process management. Okay, so what it deals with. So if we talk about the process, we have to do we have to manage that particular process. So if you go with the management of the process, okay, so what, how to manage it, what it is going to deal with is the next question. Okay, so if we talk about the what is the dealing of your process management, first it has to create a process. So once that particular process is created, so the process has to be scheduled, has to be given a place inside your main memory. So for that one, what I require, I have to set up some memory space. So where I have to set up the memory space, I have to set up the memory space in your primary memory. Okay, so the memory space has to be set up inside your primary memory. Once you set up the memory space inside your primary memory, that particular process has to be loaded into that particular primary memory. So here the space where that particular process is going to run is referred as what? Memory space. So that particular memory space always reside inside what? So that will be residing inside your primary memory. Okay, so these are some of the management what you are to do when you are setting up the process. Okay, so first we have to create the process. After creating the process, we have to set the memory space inside your primary memory. After setting the space for that particular process to run inside the primary memory, I have to load that particular process into the memory space. Okay, so now once it is setting, once the process is loaded into the primary memory, what we need to require? So we require to set up the process control block. So we require the process control block for the process and process termination and deletion. So we have to set up your process control block for the process and to look after how the process has to be controlled. Okay, so that is what your process is all about. Okay, so anybody having any doubt with respect to the process? So anybody having any doubt with respect to the process? Okay, so the next part, which this particular part is threads. So already you know what you mean by thread. So a thread is nothing but what? So a thread is a primitive structure so that can execute the code. So it is also similar to the process, but this particular thread is normally called as what? It is normally called as the lightweight process. So now, what is the property of your thread is? So thread is going to have the single sequential flow. Okay. So if you talk about the process, so inside the process is this particular thread will be having the single execution flow. Okay, so the inside this particular process is going to have the single sequential flow, so of control within any of the given process. Okay, so that's why, so since it is having the single sequential flow, so that's why normally the thread is also called as what? Lightweight process. So okay, so if we take a process can have a number of threads. depending upon the context or depending upon the type of the program, a process may have a number of threads. Okay, so you're going to have thread 1, so you are going to have thread 2, you're going to have thread 3, so you're going to have thread 4. So it will be having a number of threads. So it will be running for execution. Okay, so now if you take the threads, so as we have already seen that, so if you take the process, a process will be having its own stack, own code memory, and own your data memory that we have seen. So now, so if you take the thread, so we are telling that a thread is nothing but the part of the process. So if it is a part of the process, so that particular thread will be having the same address, memory address space as that of the process. That means what? It is going to share the same address space. So your different threads is going to share the same address space which you are going to have. So what it is going to share? So your threads is going to share the data memory, and it is going to share the data code memory, and it is going to share the heap memory. So what it is not going to share is only stack memory. Okay, so the stack memory will be different for different threads, but it is going to share your data memory, code memory, and apart from this one you are going to have heap memory. So if we talk about the heap memory, so the heap memory is going to store the uh, data which are created using the dynamic memory location. Okay, so dynamic memory location, when you are creating any variable with respect to dynamic memory location, so these uh, variables will be stored inside your heap. Okay, so whenever the process terminates, the memory with respect to heap will be released. So now what the thread maintains. So if you talk about the thread maintains their own thread status. What is that particular thread status it is going to own? Okay, so normally it is going to own the CPU register values. It is going to own your program counter. It is going to own the stack. Okay, so that means these are not shared. So this is not shared. Okay, what are it is not sharing? So these are not shared. So which are the parts which is not going to be shared? So it is not going to share your CPU register value. It is not going to share your program counter. It is not going to have the stack. So that is nothing but what? Each thread will be having the register, program counter, and stack. Okay, so it will be owned by each thread. So this owned. So that means each thread will, whichever your how many threads you are going to create. So each thread will be having its own CPU register value, program counter, and stack. Okay. So now, when you are going to have the threads, so where we are going to make use of the threads is the next question. To have the effective utilization of that particular thread inside that particular process, so what we have to do? So now, basically, if you are going with the threads, so we are going, it is nothing but it is a number of threads are created inside the process. So that means what? Multiple operations you are doing, right? So using the multi threading threads, you are going to do the multiple operations which you are going to have. So that's why we are going to have the concept of multi-threading. So when you go concept of multi-threading will come into the advantage. So when you are making use of threads. So next comes the question, what is the advantage of using the multi-threading? Okay, so what are the advantages that you are going to have? So if I am going to make use of the multi-threading. So if you are going with the advantages of your multi-threading, so it's going to be having better memory utilization. So that means only some memories you are shared. So apart from it is going to have the separate stack and separate register. Okay, so each thread will be having the separate stack and separate register, but it is going to share what? It is going to share code memory as well as the data memory. So this is shared. Okay, so these two are shared, but whereas your stack memory and the registers are different for different threads. So it may be for different for thread 1, so it is different for thread 2, and it will be different for thread 3. So all these thread will be doing the different operation. So these threads is going to do the different operation, hence it is performing the different operations individually. So if it is having the local variables, so then what will happen? So it will be having the better memory utilization. So it is going to have the better memory utilization. So now, since the process is split into threads, so one of the thread enter into the wait state, so the CPU can be utilized by other. So that means you are going to have the different states of process, right? So now once the process go to the wait state, so till it has to run the different program or different operation it has to perform. So once it is once one of the thread, okay, so here thread is nothing but the part of the process, right? So when thread is nothing but the part of the process, whenever the thread enters into the wait state, what the CPU has to do, the CPU has to be utilized by the other thread. Okay, so I'm going to have, so assume that your thread one is going for wait state. So if it is going for wait state, I have this particular thread has to be using the CPU later. So your thread 2 has to start and it has to make use of the CPU resources which it requires and it has to execute. So once it is going for wait state or completion, so your thread tree will be starting depending upon the time coding or scheduler which you are going to have. So it is going to load that particular thread into CPU memory to run. So now at a single instance of time, one or the other threads will be running. Okay, so it will not make your CPU to be kept idle. Since the CPU is not kept idle, so it is going to have the efficient utilization. Okay, so it is going to have the efficient utilization. Why? Since your CPU is not kept idle, so it is going to be engaged all the time. So the CPU is not idle means what? So CPU is not idle. So that means the CPU is working all the time or it is engaged all the time. So now if the CPU is running all the time means what? Obviously the performance of the that particular program will be improved or speed up. It will speed up the execution of the process. So obviously if you speed up the execution of particular process, what it is going to have? Your program runs faster. Okay, your program runs faster. So if you speed up the execution of the process, so it is going to have the program runs faster here. So this is what the advantage of using the threads. So by having the multi-threading. Okay, so next when it comes to threads, so you're also going to have the thread preemption. What do you mean by thread preemption? So that thread preemption is also referred as the context switching. So already have gone through the context switching already. So you're going to have two different types of threads which you're going to have. One, the thread which is running at user level. Okay, the thread which are running at the user level. The threads which are running at the kernel level. So there are two different types of threads which you're going to have. So now, if you talk about the user level thread, so the user level thread will not be having any support from your kernel or operating system. So if I talk about the user level, it is upper level. Okay. So in the upper level, what will happen? It will not having the support of your kernel. Okay. So this particular process, this particular threads will be running solely in the running process. Okay. So it will be running solely in the running process, even if it contains the multiple user level threads. Okay. So that will be running inside your running a single process only. So the single process which will be running there. So inside that one only, the thread one will be running. So even if it is having multiple threads also, it will be running inside that particular process. So whereas in your kernel level threads, what will happen? So they are individual units of execution. Okay. So now when it refers to the individual units of execution, this particular thread, so how the operating system has to behave. So if you're talking about the kernel level, so it will be operating at the operating system. It is having the support of the operating system, right? So if you talk about the kernel level threads, so here when you talk about the kernel level threads, so it's going to have the individual execution. Okay, so it's going to have the individual units of execution. And if you talk about the OS, how the OS treats that particular thread, the OS treats that particular thread as a separate thread. Okay, so now, so whenever the context switch is going to happen, what has to be done? Whenever the time quantum is going to be completed for any of that particular thread, so the OS, what it will do, the OS will interrupt the execution of the currently running thread. Okay, so after interrupting with the currently running thread, so what it has to do, it has to save at what the kernel has been stopped. So that means at what place, what is the amount of work it has been completed. So at that particular part of period only, so it has to save all the details. That means what is the value of the register, where that particular program, what is the address of the program counter, from where it has to start again. So those requirements to run again. So that has to be saved in some part. So that whenever the OS interrupts, so those will be saved. So once it is saved, so then switching the execution to another kernel thread is going to take place. So it is going to switch the execution to another thread is going to take place. So here it is going to have the this is happening with respect to the thread. So the thread which is happening with respect to the thread. Okay. So that's why, so that our context switching which we are discussing now is with respect to threads only. Okay. So whenever the context switch is going to happen, so where if any process or threads are running, so it will stop executing that particular process and it will save the states of that particular process, in which state that process is in. Okay. So because it has to start from again the same part, right? So if it is stopped at one place means what? From the same place, the process again it has to restart. So it should not begin from the beginning. So that's why it has to start from the same part where it has been stopped. For that one, what it requires the status. That means at what part that particular thread has been stopped. Okay, so that will be saved, and it will give the uh, give the execution to be done by the another thread, or it is going to switch the execution to another kernel thread. So that is how the threads preemption is going to happen with respect to the user level thread as well as the kernel level thread. Okay. So when it comes to the user level thread, so a user level thread has to be mapped for kernel level thread for execution in following scenario. Okay. So there are many models which have been used. What are the different models it is going to be used? So it has to be mapped to kernel level thread for execution. So what are the different models, execution models it's going to use is, one is many to one model, second is one to one model, third is many to many model. So in the many to one model, what will happen? So many user level threads is going to be mapped to the single kernel thread. Okay. So in many to one model, what happen? So the many user level threads, okay, which you are going to have, so that will be mapped to a single level thread. So now, so if you take the kernel, how the kernel treats all these user level threads. So the kernel treats all these user level threads as a single thread only when it is in many to one model with respect to user level thread and the kernel thread. Because if the user level thread has to run means what? That has to be mapped to the kernel level thread for execution. Okay. So it during that particular process, it has to follow these particular models. So all these user level threads will be treated as what? It is a single thread itself. Okay. So it has to be mapped into a single kernel thread itself. So now the kernel treats all user level threads as a single thread itself. Okay. So now the execution which you're going to have, so the execution switching which you're going to have among the user level threads happen in the following scenario. So how it is going to happen? So whenever the execution switching is going to happen among the user level thread, so the currently executing user level thread which is there, that will be voluntarily blocked. Okay, so that means it will go into the waiting state automatically whenever the context switching comes, and it is going to release the CPU for other thread. Okay, so the example which you are going to have is your Solaris Green threads and GNU Portal thread. So the next type of model is one-to-one model. So in the one-to-one model, what will happen? Here each user level thread is bonded to a kernel level thread one-to-one. So if one user level is there, one kernel level is there. So that will be mapped one-to-one. So the example with your operating system which they are going to use is Windows XP, Windows NT, Windows 2000, and Linux threads, which you are going to have. So then the third one is many-to-many model. So in this particular model, what will happen? Many user level threads are allowed to be mapped to many kernel threads. Okay. So that is going to have Windows NTR 2000 and kernel fiber packages. Okay. So these are some of the how it is going to map from kernel thread to user level thread. Okay. So anybody having any doubt?